Have you ever felt like you constantly have to justify your presence, as if every choice you make demands an explanation, and still, it never feels like enough? That quiet pressure from the outside starts to echo inside, draining your self-confidence. Little by little, you begin to doubt your worth even when you're doing everything right. That mental exhaustion isn't weakness. It's a sign that something needs to change before your spirit fades out. But what if true self-esteem isn't found in how others see you, but in what you refuse to abandon within yourself? What if the strength you seek is already inside, waiting to be awakened by the silence of reason? Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So maybe the real question isn't, what do they think of me? But what do I choose to protect within me, even in silence? If this message is already resonating with you, if you're tired of depending on others' approval and want to build solid, unshakable, silent self-esteem, then subscribe now. In this video, we'll walk together through the most powerful Stoic lessons, ones few people know, that can transform not only your mind, but how you see yourself. Seneca said, "No one can be considered worthy of peace if they still rely on others' applause to feel whole." The foundation of unshakable self-esteem cannot be built on the eyes of others. When you live to please, you slowly dismantle yourself with every yes you give against your will. Over time, what's left isn't identity, it's performance. Self-esteem isn't about being accepted. It's about accepting yourself, even when others don't understand your choices. Imagine someone who posts on social media daily, not out of joy, but out of fear of being forgotten. Deep down, they're not looking for connection, they're craving validation. And that reveals a wound. Self-worth based on visibility is always fragile. One less like, one harsh comment, and the whole emotional foundation starts to crumble. When external validation becomes your oxygen, your soul begins to suffocate. Stoicism teaches that true strength lies in what you control, and other people's opinions are not one of those things. When you stay silent in the face of criticism, it's not weakness, it's mental mastery. When you choose peace over argument, that's real emotional strength. Self-esteem is knowing your essence doesn't need to be approved, it only needs to be respected by yourself. Self-discipline, as Epictetus taught, is a shield against self-doubt. It prevents you from sinking when others try to belittle you. You can't control what they say, but you can choose what you believe about yourself. Strategic silence in these moments isn't the absence of response. It's the presence of wisdom. It's refusing to give your peace to someone who could never understand your worth. That's why the Stoics valued silence so deeply. Because those who master their silence master their internal narrative. Unshakable self-esteem is built when you mute the world and start listening to yourself. And it's in that listening that you remember who you are, not who you were told to be. Strengthening that space is how you reinforce your identity. And once you learn to protect your inner world, you're ready for the next step. Understanding how your past wounds silently sabotage your self-esteem and how the Stoics would heal them. Epictetus reminds us, it's not events that disturb us but our interpretation of them. Unhealed emotional wounds don't disappear with time, they hide and later return as inner voices, critical, judgmental, sabotaging. You try to move forward, to build confidence, but something inside insists, you're not good enough. And the hardest truth is, this voice isn't really yours. It's an echo of what someone once made you believe when you were vulnerable. Think of someone who was constantly ignored or criticized in childhood. As an adult, they avoid attention, reject compliments, and distrust recognition. Even when they succeed, they still doubt themselves. This isn't low self-esteem, it's an unhealed wound disguised as humility. And the danger is, if these wounds go unacknowledged, they start quietly controlling your entire mind. Stoicism invites us to see these voices as thoughts, not truths. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," meaning if you let destructive thoughts repeat without question, they'll shape your identity. But if you observe, challenge, and redirect them, you take your mind back. Stoic clarity is born from the courage to face what hurts without running. Emotional strength comes from not identifying with the pain. Feeling is human, but living under the weight of pain is an unconscious choice. The Stoics proposed a powerful practice. Write down your self-critical thoughts and confront them with rational questions. It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. Because when you challenge the internal lie, you create space for emotional truth to emerge. Self-discipline is also about not letting the past define who you are now. It's not about ignoring the pain. It's about not letting it write your story alone. Resilience is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of awareness. You may have suffered, but you don't have to become that suffering. You may have fallen, but you still deserve to rise with dignity. And to take that next step forward, we must explore something vital: how perfectionism hides deep insecurity, and what the Stoics say about breaking free from it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes woven in the pattern of your destiny for what could fit you better." Perfectionism is born from the illusion that if you do everything right, no one will reject you. But that constant quest for flawlessness isn't about excellence, it's about fear. Fear of making mistakes and being ridiculed. Fear of showing weakness and being excluded. Fear of being human and being deemed not enough. And silently, this fear erodes your self-worth. Think of someone who has always been praised for being the example. They learn that love is conditional, only given when they perform well. So they start avoiding risk, avoid asking for help, and live exhausted trying to maintain an image of control. But inside, there's anxiety, insecurity, and a voice screaming, "What if I'm not perfect today?" That's not a free life. It's a golden prison built from conditional praise. Stoicism teaches that virtue lies in effort, not perfection. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Mistakes to the Stoic are teachers, not sentences. True self-esteem doesn't come from being flawless, but from being willing to learn without tearing yourself apart. Realizing this is liberating because it allows you to breathe without the weight of being invincible. When you demand perfection from yourself, you create a constant inner pressure that robs you of peace. And when you demand it from others, you block real connection. Stoic wisdom teaches you to find the balance between idealism and reality, between progress and acceptance. It is possible to aim higher without hating yourself for not being perfect. You can fail and still respect yourself deeply. Unshakable self-esteem isn't built by avoiding mistakes, but by changing your relationship with them. When you treat yourself with compassion in moments of failure, you grow stronger. And instead of being controlled by the fear of disappointing others, you begin to act with courage, even knowing you're imperfect. That's emotional strength. That's mastery of the mind. And now that you understand the trap of perfectionism, we must face something even deeper. How constantly comparing yourself to others is silently destroying your self-worth, and how the Stoics would break that cycle. Epictetus said, "If you want to be unstoppable, stop comparing." Comparison may seem harmless, but behind it lies a deep wound. The belief that your worth only exists when you're better, faster, more admired than someone else. Self-esteem begins to wither when you measure your path by someone else's journey, and by doing that, you start to abandon your own essence just to fit into molds that betray your truth. Think of someone who feels fine until they open Instagram. One glimpse at someone else's achievement, and suddenly they feel behind, small, inadequate. That happens because their mind has been conditioned to use others as a mirror for value. And the cruel part is this: the more you compare yourself, the further you drift from who you are. Your self-esteem cracks under the pressure of always being less, even when you're actually at peace. Stoicism teaches that the only healthy comparison is between who you were yesterday and who you're becoming today. Seneca said, "Life is not short, we just waste much of it." The time you spend comparing yourself is the same time you could be investing in strengthening yourself. It's not about ignoring others' success. It's about learning from it without diminishing your own. Self-discipline also means training your mind to reconnect with what matters, your unique path. When you focus on your own growth, no matter how small, you begin to feel genuine pride, even without applause. That quiet pride is what the Stoics called inner contentment. It doesn't need to be loud or spectacular, it just needs to be true. Strategic silence in this context is not needing to shout to be seen, but learning to listen to what your soul truly wants. It's understanding that you don't need to compete with anyone, when you're at peace with your direction. And self-esteem thrives exactly in that soil where there's no rush, no comparison, only clarity and consistency. Life becomes lighter when you begin to see yourself through truthful eyes. And to keep this clear vision alive, especially on the hard days, we now need to confront something even more dangerous: how negative thoughts infiltrate your mind, and how Stoicism teaches you to master them before they paralyze you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And this is one of the most overlooked truths by those struggling with self-esteem. Negative thoughts, when left unchallenged, become beliefs. And beliefs shape emotional realities that influence every action. Most people don't suffer from what happens. They suffer from what they imagine might happen. They suffer from hypotheticals, not reality. A common example is when you make a small mistake and your mind instantly says, "You're a failure." Within seconds, the thought becomes a certainty, without ever being questioned. That's the danger. An undisciplined mind becomes a minefield. Everything becomes a trigger for guilt, fear, shame, or self-rejection. And self-esteem isn't destroyed by the world, but quietly, by yourself. Epictetus teaches, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." That includes how you react to your own thoughts. Stoicism offers a simple but powerful practice. Observe the thought, name it, and challenge it. Ask, "Is this 100% true?" Then ask, "Does this thought bring me closer to or further from the life I want?" That small pause creates space. And in that space, mental mastery begins. Emotional resilience begins when you become the guardian of your own mind. When you stop accepting every thought as an absolute truth and start filtering, redirecting, and replacing them. This isn't toxic positivity. It's emotional intelligence. It's the conscious decision to direct your attention. Because whatever you feed grows, including doubt, including strength. Unshakable self-esteem requires internal vigilance. It's like a mental fortress. You can't stop bad thoughts from knocking, but you can stop them from staying. And that is something you learn with practice, repetition, and patience. The Stoics were masters of this, not because they didn't feel pain, but because they refused to be ruled by it. Real freedom lives there. And to sustain that emotional freedom in your daily life, we now move to something even more practical: the power of self-discipline in building real self-esteem, and how to apply it even when you feel zero motivation. Seneca reminds us, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." And a prepared mind is the result of a quiet practice called self-discipline. Unlike what many believe, self-esteem doesn't come from motivational quotes or external praise. It's built in each silent decision you make when no one is watching. It's saying yes to what strengthens you and no to what weakens you, even when your impulses pull the other way. Self-discipline is self-respect in action. Imagine someone who wakes up early every day to go for a walk, even without motivation. It's not the act itself that transforms them. It's the silent message they send to themselves. "I am reliable. I keep my promises to me." Over time, this builds a strong, resilient identity. And that inner trust is what we call real self-esteem, the kind that doesn't crumble when the world ignores you. Stoicism deeply values consistency. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal every morning as a way to align his mind with his principles. That wasn't ritual, it was commitment. A mind that is loyal to its values becomes unshakable in the face of external distraction. Because it knows what matters, even when the world tries to tempt it with ease, speed, and comfort. Self-discipline isn't rigidity, it's freedom with direction. When you practice self-control, you're no longer a hostage to your impulses. You begin to live with more clarity, more peace, more purpose. And that quiet strength holds you up during the hard days. While others collapse from lack of inner structure, you remain standing, not because you're immune, but because you're prepared. That's applied emotional strength. True self-esteem is born from the accumulation of small daily victories over yourself. You don't need grand achievements to feel worthy. You only need to stay loyal to your principles, even when no one is watching. That is mastery of the mind, that is philosophy lived, that is being stoic in the middle of chaos. And believe this, when you act with discipline in silence, your value starts to roar from within. And now that you understand the power of inner discipline, it's time to face a silent enemy, the fear of rejection, and how the Stoics transformed it into practical self-confidence. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to be loved, love yourself first." Rejection hurts, and for good reason. We're social beings wired to seek belonging. But when that desire for acceptance becomes obsession, we lose something sacred, our truth. The fear of rejection makes you hide your essence, your thoughts, your emotions, just to be accepted by people who often don't truly see you. And every time you abandon yourself to please others, your self-esteem quietly erodes. Think of someone who never says no, even when they're exhausted. They believe that if they're always kind and available, they'll never be rejected. But deep down, they live in frustration and resentment, because every yes to others is a no to themselves. That's not kindness, it's fear disguised as generosity, and that fear creates unbalanced relationships where the person feels small, used, invisible. Stoic philosophy offers a turning point. You don't need to be accepted by everyone, you need to be true to your principles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A soul that is not dependent on others' approval is invincible." When you begin to live according to your values, even if it costs you criticism or distance, something shifts inside. You start to look at yourself with respect, and that respect is worth more than any superficial applause. Mastery of the mind shows itself in these moments. When you fear being rejected, but refuse to betray yourself. That doesn't mean being arrogant or inflexible. It means having clarity about who you are and what you deserve. It's knowing that the temporary pain of rejection is never worse than the lifelong pain of living a lie. Unshakable self-esteem is born when you stay whole, even in the face of disapproval. Stoic resilience means accepting that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. You don't have to belong in rooms where your truth isn't welcome. Freedom begins when you stop seeking acceptance and start seeking alignment, because those who are loyal to themselves, sooner or later, attract real connections, genuine opportunities, and deep inner peace. That is the power of authenticity. And now that we've cleared this space inside you, let's embrace the final truth: how solitude can become your ally in rebuilding self-worth, and why the Stoics valued inner retreat so deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Withdraw into yourself. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Many fear solitude as if it were a sign of failure, rejection, or emptiness. But to the Stoics, silence and withdrawal were sacred moments, gateways to self-reconnection. Self-esteem weakens when you're constantly surrounded by noise, distractions, and demands. Only in silence can you hear your own voice clearly, and it's there that true rebuilding begins. Think of someone who constantly fills their day with activities, social media, conversations, and distractions. When alone, they feel uneasy, as if something is missing. But that discomfort reveals a deeper truth. They haven't learned to be with themselves. And that inability to be at peace in your own presence is a symptom of fragile self-esteem, built only in the presence of others, never within yourself. Stoicism invites voluntary retreat, not as escape, but as empowerment. Epictetus taught that self-knowledge begins with silent observation. It is in solitude that you review your choices, confront your fears, and realign with your values. Stoic clarity arises when you realize you are not alone. You are with yourself, and that this meeting can be the most healing of all. Peace begins when you become good company to your own soul. Mastery of the mind also means knowing when to step back. It's understanding that growth doesn't always happen in the crowd, but in the quiet. In stillness you listen, and when you truly listen you begin to understand, and when you understand you begin to respect, and when you respect yourself you begin to strengthen. This is the inner cycle the Stoic masters sought, not out of pride but out of wisdom. Unshakable self-esteem doesn't mean shouting to the world who you are. It means being able to sit in silence and still know your worth. It's turning solitude into sanctuary. It's making space for inner construction. When you learn how to nourish yourself from within, you no longer depend on anyone's presence to feel whole. That is freedom. That is emotional strength. That is philosophy lived. Do you remember the silent pain we began this journey with? That feeling of constantly needing to explain yourself, living on the defensive, seeking validation that never fully comes. Now, after walking through these Stoic lessons, perhaps you've realized that the answer was never out there. It was always in how you choose to stand before the world. Because when you stop fighting for acceptance and begin walking in clarity, everything changes. Unshakable self-esteem doesn't come from applause, praise, or visible success. It's born the moment you decide, firmly and gently, not to abandon yourself again. When you honor your emotions without drowning in them. When you discipline yourself with love, forgive yourself with maturity, and listen to yourself with attention. Because as Epictetus said, no one is free until they have mastered themselves. And this isn't just philosophy, it's a sacred pact with your soul. If you've made it this far, something inside you is already stronger. So comment now, I choose Stoic strength. That shows you're ready to live with more wisdom, clarity, and self-respect. And if this video touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of inner power. Remember, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be true.